In this lesson, we'll subdivide our model to give it better shape. So picking up right where we left off with the last lesson, we were working with adding this transform node here to show the procedural nature of how we can maintain intact the bridge, or at least Houdini will really try to maintain that bridge, while we can also rotate the original source geometry. Now the only problem we're having here is that the pivot point for that original source geometry is not quite in the right spot. It's kind of sitting off here to the left a little bit. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, we can actually adjust that in several different ways if we wanted. Of course, we know we could use the value ladder to adjust the pivot's position. We could scoot it over in Z a little bit, see if that helped. But really, what we want is we want that pivot point to be exactly at the center of the source circle. Well, remember we've done that before. We've actually moved the tube over to the exact center of what the source circle was. And we did that by using the expressions. So all we need to do now here is come over to the center property of the source circle. We'll right click, we'll copy that parameter. We'll jump down here to our transform node. And in the pivot position, right click, paste copied relative references. Now what that does is it puts the exact same position that we're pulling, that we set the circle at, and it pulls that information and sets the pivot right at the middle of that circle. So what that means now is that if I use my transform tool here and I go ahead and rotate, that I'm actually rotating now right at the center of what it is. And you can see that because of the way that the poly bridge is trying to maintain its position, we're getting all kinds of fun little twists and kind of procedural shapes that we're not really able to get just using the tools that are within the poly bridge. You got some real subtle little twists. There's just some really interesting shapes that you can get out of this. I kind of like this more subtle version here with just a little bit of a twist, a little bit of an offset, not anything too crazy. I'll just sort of do something that looks kind of cool. Let's say we leave it right there. So just another way that we can sort of use the expression language that we're using, our Houdini expressions, to help us and assist us as we use the other poly modeling tools available to us. Now, one more thing I want to do before we add any more subdivisions or before we explore the subdividing tool is I want to knock down the amount of separation we have in our poly bridge. So let's come down here to our final poly bridge. And since we don't have any really delicate twisting or tapering going on, I'm going to take the divisions down. I get them to something that sort of looks practical, still smooth, not chunky, but not too crazy. I think I was about good with 12. 12 seemed to work right. So let's just leave it there at 12. Now we have the general shape, sort of like if you were sculpting this, you have a general shape chiseled out. But we really want to get a little more definition here. We don't want our tire to be blocky on the ends like this, and we'd really like to get a little more smoothness here. Well, you can do that in Houdini by using the subdivide node. So let's go ahead and add in a subdivide node here. So I'm just going to hover over in some empty space in my network view, and I'm going to do tab and type out SUB, and here comes the subdivide node. So I'll put the subdivide node down, and I want to connect the poly bridge output of the poly bridge to the left or first input of the subdivide. So let's go ahead and connect that up. And then we'll move our display flag down here to the subdivide node. All right, so we now have a round wheel. Although the corners have really been rounded off, it kind of made that lip a little bit funny here. And I'm not too concerned about this element here because it will be inside the geometry of the car, which we can see again if we ghost other objects. So you can see that it's sort of tucked away and hidden. But I'm still not real thrilled with the way that we lost some resolution here on this edge. I really want my tire to look a little more square than that. Well, that is actually just a result of the subdivision. The way the subdivision works is it adds in twice as many polygons as were there before, and then basically sort of averages their positions. And because of that, if we look back at our poly bridge, we have this nice edge defined here, but it is blocky. And with the subdivide, we get the smoother transition around the corners, but we have the also smoothness around the corners happening on the edge. So the way that we combat that is by inserting edge loops. And the way that we do that is the same way we did before when we inserted the edge loops to provide the space for the destination of our poly bridge. But I don't really know exactly where I want those edge loops to be inserted. Really what I need is kind of a template of the old blocky look, and then sort of to be able to see the result as I insert those edge loops. For example, if I'm working at the subdivide level, I can't just insert edge loops here. If I just start inserting edge loops here, they happen, obviously here after the subdivide, and it's not really helping me define that shape anymore. So I'll go ahead and grab those and we'll delete them. So really what I need to do is to be able to work here at the poly bridge level, but see the subdivide as a preview. And that's really what I've done. So I need to make sure that my display flag is on subdivide, but then select the poly bridge node. Now any nodes that I insert at this point will be inserted in between the display flag and the selected node. So I've got the poly bridge selected here. I'll go up now, grab my edge loop tool, and say, okay, I want to insert a loop a little closer here to the front face of the tire. So I'll insert one there, and bam, you can automatically see how the subdivide is going to handle that inserted edge loop. And it does kind of fix my problem, at least on the front side. So I need to add another one here near the back edge of the tire as well. So I still have the edge loop tool selected, and I can insert one. Let's get this viewport a little bit easier to see. Here we go. I can insert this edge loop closer to the back edge of the tire. We'll go ahead and just click and insert it. And yes, it also fixes the same issue on the back edge of the tire. I've also kind of got this same thing happening here on the little hub in the middle of the brake assembly. So let's go ahead and insert an edge loop on that edge as well. So I'll just sort of get something a little closer to the front face. And when I do, I get a nice, well, not nice sharp, but a more defined edge here that transitions after the subdivide, and that's good. And I know it's still hidden beneath the car, but I'm going to go ahead and add one here just in case some of it might ever get seen. I'd like for that to look, a little more square than what it does right now. So let's go ahead and insert that edge loop here. Just somewhere about right here. There we go. So that really helps define the shape of the tire after the edge, after the subdivide. And you can see as we look in the network view, here are the poly splits that we just added. We'll zoom in just a little bit there. I'll scoot this up. They happened after the poly bridge because we had the poly bridge selected. There's all of our splits, split, and then the subdivide was applied. And now we can see the result of the subdivide. And man, it looks really good. We now have a nice smooth shaped wheel and tire assembly. It's very, very cool. And it doesn't have a lot of polygons, but it's got just enough to sort of define that round shape like we need for the tire and wheel assembly. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to build a custom interface and begin to add the animation of the spinning wheels.